Hi everyone. Extant music from the 16th century and earlier is predominantly vocal music. The text, therefore, exerts a great influence on the form, the choice of mode, the melodic contour, and other aspects of the resultant musical works. Notwithstanding this influence, in this video I will not be discussing in great detail the various rules of Renaissance text setting, as I believe the contrapuntal techniques of this work will be more accessible and more transferable to other contemporary styles of modal instrumental music if these rules are here omitted. I will, however, discuss how the text has influenced the form of this work. Justus cor suum consists of 5 lines of text. In the music, the ends of these lines are always separated from the beginnings of the following line either by a rest and/or by a cadence. In other words, each line of text is treated as a phrase which is either concluded by a cadence or by a rest. These phrases may also be subdivided, such as here, where the first part of the text is repeated, and here during the final phrase where the full text is repeated. Justus cor suum uses the D Dorian mode. Although later Renaissance music would introduce more accidentals, for much music of this era, accidentals were only used to correct tritones and at cadences where they raised the leading note. At cadences, accidentals were only introduced when the note beneath the mode's root note, or final, was a tone below. For example, here and here, Lassus uses a C sharp to create a semitone beneath D, and here he uses a G sharp, creating a semitone below A. Because the vast majority of Renaissance music uses what we now know as the white key modes, or the modes of C major, B flat is used to correct the tritone, which occurs between B and F. It may be used to correct a melodic tritone, such as here, or a harmonic tritone, such as here. The same mode was generally used throughout a work, as there was no modulation. For variety, composers cadenced on different degrees of the mode. In Dorian, for example, along with cadences on D, other common cadences occurred on F and A. Less common were cadences on other degrees of the mode, although here, for example, Lassus also cadences on C. When a cadence occurred, a suspension was most always included. At these cadences, for example, 7/6 suspensions are used, and here a 2/3 suspension. In two-part works, these suspension types are the most commonly used for upper and lower voice suspensions, although 4/3 and 9/8 upper suspensions and 4/5 lower suspensions may also be found. Although the suspension's resolution is typically doubled in both parts, creating either an octave or unison, occasionally one part, while the other part's note is sustained, will omit the octave or unison note and will instead contain a rest before beginning a new phrase. In a two-part work of this type, if both voices rest simultaneously, the sound would cease. This type of dovetailing ensures the sound is sustained throughout. The suspended note always occurs on a strong beat. In this work, therefore, it is either on beat 1 or beat 3, while the resolution occurs on the following weak beat. During the Renaissance, suspensions were one of the only allowable on-beat dissonances, the other being the descending accented passing note, which in this work can only be used on beats 2 and 4. Here, for example, the E is sounded on beat 4 before moving to an octave D with the lower part, and here the B natural sounds on beat 2 before moving to a third with the lower parts F. Harmonically, the interaction of parts produces combinations of perfect and imperfect consonances, which may also form triadic groups, such as here, where an F major triad is produced, and here a D minor triad. Because the work is modal, however, except for cadences, chords move arbitrarily and lack any hierarchy. The parts are simply interacting harmonically with intervals which together may form a consonance or dissonance or a triadic combination. The use of terms such as tonic, dominant, and subdominant to describe these combinations is therefore typically avoided. While it may be true to say that harmonic perfect consonances such as the fifth, octave, and unison occur more frequently than in later music, as you can see through the first few bars, for example, while these intervals are present, thirds and sixths are also used. Much Renaissance music uses imitation as a means of organizing and unifying a work. Use of imitation can be limited to the beginnings of phrases, or as with this work, can form an integral part of the work's overall structure. In Justus Cor Suum, Lassus takes the imitation further, writing the parts canonically. He varies the interval at which his canons begin. For example, in these bars, the parts begin an octave apart, and in these, they begin at the interval of a sixth. Notice, when a part begins on a strong beat, the other part will typically do the same. For example, here, both parts begin on beat 1. The opposite is also true, such as here, where both parts begin on a weak beat. An exception occurs here, where although the upper part begins on a strong beat, the lower part begins on a weak beat. As you can see, however, in these bars the lower part is not imitating the upper part, and more freedom therefore can be given to its shape and metric location. There is also larger structural factors influencing these final 10 bars, a point I will discuss shortly. Through the first 23 bars, Lassus ensures that at the beginnings of phrases, the canon follows a standard structure, with the following part imitating exactly the melody and rhythm of the leading part. However, he also mixes in what is often called a rhythmic canon. Until here, for example, the lower part copies exactly the upper part's melody and rhythm. After the C, however, although a quarter note is still used in the lower part, instead of copying the upper part's A, the lower part sings D. In other words, in a rhythmic canon, the rhythm of both parts is identical, but the notes may vary. This diagram shows the extent to which canon, both standard and rhythmic, is used in the first 23 bars of the work. As you can see, it is generally at cadences where the canon ends and free counterpoint is used to form the cadence. For the work's final 10 bars, instead of canon, Lassus uses imitation to construct the parts. The main structural imitation comes from this upper part melody, which is then used here in the lower part. The rhythm of this cadence on F is also used here for this cadence on A. Lassus also takes this figure, which cadences on C, and raises it a tone to conclude the work with a cadence on D. This type of idea was also used earlier, where this figure begins a step lower than here. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.